Welcome to the Idea to Value podcast, where in every episode we highlight the latest insights into creativity and innovation from experts around the world. I'm your host, Nick Skillicorn. I care about the evidence behind what makes ideas happen, and I've already helped thousands of people just like you through my unique insights into recent scientific findings of how creativity works. I also show you how to turbocharge innovation programs so they finally deliver on the value and ideas you've been struggling to execute. Get your free training on how creativity can be improved by registering now at www.ideatovalue.com. Now let's get on with today's episode. Hello everyone, and welcome to another very special interview for the Idea to Value podcast. I'm pleased to have Dr. Valerie Young with us today. Dr. Young wrote an award-winning book recently called The Secret Thoughts of Successful Women, and it's about why capable people suffer from the imposter syndrome and how to thrive in spite of it. So our discussion today is going to deal with something that I think a lot of people might struggle with, but not understand very much. It's this feeling of being an imposter and not quite realizing how good you really are. Dr. Young, it's wonderful having you here.
I'm thrilled to be here, Nicholas.
So for people who don't know you or what work you do, could you just give us a brief background as to where you started and how you got to where you are now?
Sure, absolutely. I was 21 years old. I was a doctoral student at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, and the same university where my mother was working as a second shift janitor at the time. And someone brought in a paper by Dr. Pauline Clance and Dr. Suzanne Imes called The Imposter Phenomenon Amongst High-Achieving Women. And she started reading from this paper and describing these findings that, all these bright, capable, talented people didn't feel that way. They felt like they were fooling people. They were attributing their success to things like luck or timing or connections or, they just like my presentation just because they like me, computer error. But they were coming up with these kind of excuses for their success and just felt like they didn't deserve it. And I sat there, Nicholas, just nodding my head like a bobblehead doll, going, oh my God, that's me. And then I looked around the room and all the other graduate students were nodding their head. So we got into a little imposter support group. We started meeting after class, talking about being intellectual frauds who were fooling our professors. And everything went great for about 3 weeks. And that's about the time I started to get this nagging sense that even though the other students were saying they were imposters, I knew I was the only real imposter. I got so fascinated, Nicholas, by this topic, I changed my entire direction of my research, and I decided to look more broadly at women's self-limiting, patterns and behaviors. Started doing workshops over the years that evolved into bigger workshops, bigger audiences, speaking engagements at companies like Boeing and Facebook and Apple and Procter & Gamble and IBM and lots of colleges and universities in the US and Canada. And I've been speaking on this topic ever since.
So in a nutshell, for people who haven't heard of the term before, what is the imposter syndrome and what sort of is the overall feeling that people might recognize it for?
Yeah, it's just kind of the sense that, I'm in over my head and they're going to find out. And so even though there's all this concrete, tangible evidence of your ability, it could be good grades or degree, promotions, business growth, awards, Academy Awards, a lot of Academy Award winners have these feelings. Despite all this external evidence, Nicholas, people who feel like imposters, have this strong internal belief that they're really not as bright and capable as people think they are. And they explain away all this evidence of their abilities. Like I said, luck, charm, personality, timing. Years ago, high-ranking administrator couldn't believe they gave her the job. Well, once she got there, she found out the hiring committee had come directly from a wine function. She said, I get it, right? They were drunk. So the anxiety for people who feel like imposters is, well, first of all, you never feel joy when you do accomplish something. You only feel relief. It's kind of, phew, got through that one, but it's the next one where I'm going to be found out. And then there's just that anxiety of kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop, as they say. So it can be very stressful to have these imposter feelings.
And is there any research out there to suggest what sort of people tend to experience these feelings more than others? I mean, you mentioned Academy Award winners. You'd expect them to be extremely aware of how good they are, but is it just the creative types? Is it just artists, or does this affect people in business as well?
Oh, absolutely affects people in business. But there are certain fields where you're going to find people who are more susceptible, like, as you said, in creative fields, artists, actors, writers, because, you're being judged by subjective standards by people whose job title is professional critic. And you're only as good as your last book or your last movie, which is very different than, accounting, for example. I find most of the corporations I speak in, there's a high, STEM focus, science, technology, engineering, or math. And I would add law in there. If you're in a field where the information is evolving at such an incredibly rapid rate, that no human on the planet could ever keep up, there's always a sense of being a little bit behind all the time. Universities, colleges, a lot of professors feel like imposters because there's certain ways that academic culture in and of itself fuels self-doubt. But there's other variables like being an international student or an international worker. There's some research that finds that group is more susceptible. You've got all the same, stresses and demands as everyone else, but you're doing it in another culture and perhaps in a second language. People who work alone are susceptible because we're always just judging ourselves on our own, very high standards. We have no one to get that performance review from. And then, anytime you're a student, you're vulnerable. So there's kind of categories of situational factors, but also family messages can play a role. The messages you got growing up about success, about achievement, about failure, that can make a difference as well.
And one of the reasons I was so excited to have you on this podcast specifically is that I know a lot of people who are trying to do innovative things, and especially people who are trying to be entrepreneurial and starting up a company. Those people quite often really struggle not only convincing other people of the value of what they're developing, but quite often themselves as well. Quite often you'll hear them actively saying, I'm trying to fake it till I make it.
Right.
What's your view on that?
I think that fake it till you make it's gotten kind of a bad rap because it doesn't mean, be inauthentic. It doesn't mean lie or be deceitful. I take it to mean don't wait until you feel confident to act in confident ways, right? Don't wait until you feel confident to jump in there, for example, and start your own business. I'm I feet in different worlds, and one of the world is the world of multimillionaire online business owners, right? And some of these guys, their mantra is half-ass is better than no ass. And they don't mean do a bad job. What they mean is they're talking to all the procrastinators out there and people who feel like imposters. One of the coping mechanisms is procrastination. And what they're saying to them is, you got to get version 1 out the door. Start your first podcast, get your first product out there, whatever it might be. And then you can improve as you go along. You can course correct as you go along. But imposter syndrome absolutely, I think, can inhibit creativity and innovation, especially if you think you've got to come up with some new idea that no one on the planet has ever thought of before. It's like, good luck with that. And it's not even the smartest thing to do. If nobody else is doing it, there may be a reason.
So one of the reasons that I was also so keen to have you on is I was really inspired by some work you've done which actually separates different ways that the imposter syndrome manifests itself between different types of people. Can you give us some highlights as to what those different ways are?
Sure. And this actually, Nicholas, goes back to the question of, why do people feel this way? And the common source for everyone is that people who feel like imposters, we experience shame when we fail. Right? I mean, nobody likes to fail or have a bad day or not know the answer or struggle to master something. But when these things happen to folks who feel like imposters, we experience shame. But we don't all experience that shame the same way. For many years, I would do workshops, get people into groups and give them a flip chart and have them come up with the imposter rule book. In other words, if I was really intelligent, capable, competent, I should, or I'd never, or I'd always, right? So they would come up with these crazy rules, which intellectually we know are crazy, like the young man at Stanford University who said, I feel like I should already know what I came here to learn, right? So when you say it out loud, it's like crazy talk. but that's what's going on in his head. So having collected those flip charts over the years, what I found, Nicholas, was some patterns, right? People who feel like imposters, we all distort what it means to be competent, but we don't all distort it the same way. So I kind of came up with these 5 competence types. The first one people will recognize right away, of course, is the perfectionist. So in this person's rule book, 99 out of 100 is not acceptable, right? It has to be a flawless, perfect performance every single time. Forgetting to make one minor point in a 1-hour presentation, you will beat yourself up endlessly, right? Because you expect perfection. So shame for the perfectionist is pretty much kind of everything. Because even if you do it perfectly, you're still not satisfied because you feel like you could have always done it better. Then there's the expert. And think of the expert as the knowledge version of the perfectionist. So in this person's rule book, it's not so much about the quality of their work. I mean, that's important, but for them, it's about the quantity of knowledge that they know. And in their mind, they can never know enough. So there's always one more book to read, one more class to take, one more degree to get, right, before they ever put themselves out there or launch their business or raise their hand and speak up or go for promotion, etc. The next one is I call that person the natural genius. For this person, somehow they got it into their head that if I was really intelligent and capable and competent, this wouldn't be this hard. So they're defining competence as being about kind of ease and speed, right? They expect everything to come quickly and easily. And when they hit a wall and it's hard to learn how to play the guitar, or they're struggling to learn a language or a piece of software or some element of starting a business, then they often get frustrated and give up and think I must not be qualified. So shame for that person is going to be the struggle. The soloist, the rugged individualist, that's the person who defines competence as an individual solo achievement. So for shame for them is going to be needing to ask for help. Because if I was really all that, I wouldn't need any help. I should be able to figure it out by myself. And the last one is kind of the Superwoman, Superman, super student who expects themselves not just to perform, at this 100% level in their work life, but also, in terms of, family or appearance or, physicality and fitness, and their house has to be perfect. The kids have to be perfect. And then they got to volunteer on top of that. So very high expectations across all those levels.
And so what impact does this have on people? Do different people sort of experience the world differently based on what competency they most associate with?
Well, I think there's costs associated with each one. I'm a big fan of, I'm not a very black and white person. I think it's a more nuanced conversation. The world tends to be pretty nuanced. And what I mean by that is that there's good news about all of these types, Nicholas. And if there wasn't, we would have hopefully abandoned them a long time ago. But we're getting something out. There's a part that's working. So if you're a perfectionist, the good news for you is you care deeply about the quality of your work. That's great, right? Keep that. The part you have to let go of, the part that's holding you back from being innovative and creative and achieving your goals, is this belief that you can do everything perfectly, or that it's even advisable to do everything perfectly. You're not learning anything, right? If your whole life is, I was born, I was perfect. I grew up, I was perfect. Everything was perfect. Like, what are you learning in all that, right? It's boring. For the expert, the good news is you care deeply about knowledge and learning and information, right? Keep that, but let go of that crazy idea that you can know it all, which is the equivalent of trying to get to the end of the internet, right? You're never going to know it all, and that's okay. The natural genius, the great news is you love mastery. That's why it frustrates you when it's taking you longer than you think to get good at something. So for that person, they have to let go of the kind of shame of the struggle. And you might want to go read biographies of famous people who struggled, for years and years to master their craft and get good at things. Because the natural genius expects you to sit down and write the book, right? No drafts, no edits, just write the book, right? Or shoot the video and have it be perfect the first time. No audition, no practice. which is just not realistic. So for each one of those, there's some positives you want to hold on to. Being independent is great for that soloist, but let go of this erroneous notion that you should do everything yourself. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do is pick up the phone. Hey, Nicholas, I've never done a podcast. You have 10 minutes to help me understand how to get started. Go look something up. You don't have to do everything all by yourself.
I think that's great news. And I think one of the main things that I, in my line of work, also try and help people understand is sometimes understanding what's actually going on inside your mind or is causing these things to happen. Just the simple fact of understanding it helps you take the next step to improve yourself and sort of take yourself to the next level. So do you have any tips about sort of, it doesn't necessarily need to be easy things to try, but things that people can do to overcome the imposter syndrome?
Yeah, and actually, I don't want to suggest it's easy, but it's simple. And what I mean by that is that, well, first thing, and you just said it, kind of talk about these feelings, right? Naming them is the first step, talking about them. But I don't want people to get stuck there. There are people who literally spend years in therapy talking about imposter feelings, and they don't get any farther along. And you can't share your way out of imposter syndrome. And there's actually research that shows adolescents who, what they call co-ruminate, in other words, who dwell on negative thoughts and feelings with their friends, actually experience higher levels of depression and anxiety. What you can do is obviously talk about it, but in a very normalizing kind of way. So there's really kind of three core things you can do, Nicholas. One is to normalize imposter feelings. So talk about them, but not in that confessional, oh my God, I felt like such an imposter on that podcast, right? Not that way. Instead to go, oh my God, I had such an imposter moment in that meeting. And the person will go, what's that? Oh, you haven't heard about that? Oh, millions of people feel this way. It's very normal. Because this is where I have to break it to all your listeners that they're not special, right? 70% of people have these feelings. Some of the most talented people on the planet have these feelings. So normalize self-doubt. You're going to have moments of fear. You're going to have moments of confidence. And it's really don't confuse confidence and confidence. We all have moments where you're scared to death, and that's okay. The second step is to reframe. And that goes right to what you were saying, Nicholas, is become consciously aware of the conversation going on in your head. So when you're having an imposter moment, what's that thought going through your head? And then you have to reframe it the way a non-imposter would. Because the fact is, people who don't feel like imposters are no more intelligent or capable or competent than you or I. The only difference between them and us is they think different thoughts. In that exact same scenario where you felt like an imposter, they're thinking something different, which is great news because it means all we really have to do is to start thinking like a non-imposter. In other words, if you want to stop feeling like an imposter, you have to stop thinking like an imposter. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples. So one is, you're starting something new, you get a big project, you get a big assignment, and, your thought is, oh my God, I have no idea what I'm doing. The non-imposter thinks, wow, I'm really going to learn a lot, right? The person who feels like an imposter walks into a situation, a conference, they get accepted into some, elite program, and they think, oh my God, everyone here is brilliant. The non-imposter goes, wow, everyone here is brilliant, right? I'm going to learn so much. The imposter is crushed by even constructive criticism. Somebody could give you 5 things you did fabulous and then give you one piece of critical feedback. All you hold on to is the critical feedback. Non-imposters, even if they're complimented, they say, thank you so much. Listen, what's one thing I could have done even better? Because they're all about, continuing to grow and improve, and they crave information that's going to help them do that. So you have to start thinking like, well, how would a non-imposter look at this situation? I mean, you could be crushingly disappointed if you blow the moment, if you fail. You can be disappointed, but not ashamed. Like the only time you should feel shame is if you really didn't try. So normalize, reframe. And the third thing is to keep going regardless of how you feel. Feelings are the last to change. People want to go to one of my workshops or one of my talks, and they want to walk in feeling like an imposter, and they want to walk out not feeling like an imposter. And that's not how it works. Feelings are the last to change. You have to change how you think, even though you don't believe the new thoughts. And then you can't wait until you feel confident to go for the promotion, to submit your art to the gallery, to start your business, to write your book, whatever it is. You got to do the thing you don't think you can do, learn from it, keep going, and over time you'll believe the new thoughts. Because the goal, Nicholas, is not to never feel like an imposter again. Because remember, we're normalizing imposter feelings. The goal is when you have an imposter moment, as I do, to be able to talk yourself down faster. So it's an imposter moment and not an imposter life.
I think that's wonderful advice. And I was especially struck by one thing you mentioned about, especially in your world, things aren't black and white. There's always nuances. And so I'm thinking of people at one extreme being 100% suffering from imposter syndromes. And what's the opposite of that? It's probably people who are completely overconfident in their abilities the whole time. So my last question to you is, how do people go about finding out to what degree there is still room for improvement? So getting feedback from other people to sort of gauge to what degree they are more experts than they give themselves credit for, or finding out places where, you know what, I do actually still need to work on things. I do actually still need to develop my knowledge, my expertise.
I think just about everybody needs to continue to develop their knowledge and expertise. I don't think we ever, kind of stop. I know, some of the best athletes and musicians on the planet, they continue to practice. Chris Rock, the comedian, if he's going to be on a late night show, he goes out and does stand-up 3 or 4 nights before that to kind of warm up. You'd think he's at the top of his game. He wouldn't need that, but you can always improve. You can always learn new things. In terms of being an expert, I mean, obviously it's different if you're going to be a brain surgeon and then a whole bunch of other stuff. But my friend Suzanne always says to third graders, fourth graders are gods. So you don't have to know, that much more than, you don't have to have 3 PhDs to be able to share your knowledge and information and insight with the world. Again, some of the most successful entrepreneurs, Jean Nidich, who started out just doing little groups in her home of people who wanted to talk about losing weight. I didn't even have a college degree, and she started a little multi-billion-dollar empire called Weight Watchers. And there's many stories like that of people who just put their expertise, their information, experience out there and developed a business and a following.
Dr. Young, it's been wonderful speaking with you. I think a lot of people are going to want to find out more about what you've written on the subject and maybe your thoughts on it. Where can people go to sort of get a bit more information and insights from you?
It is so easy because it's impostorsyndrome.com, and everything they need to know is right there.
Perfect. We'll have the link down below the description. And Dr. Young, it's been wonderful having you here, and I look forward to speaking again with you soon.
I hope so. Thanks so much. You did a great job.
Today's episode was made possible by members of our premium Deep Creativity Training Program. For less than the price of half a candy bar per day, you too can get world-exclusive daily exercises which push your creativity past its comfort barrier to make you better able to generate ideas in all aspects of your life and work. Invest in yourself now by going to www.ideatovalue.com/deepcreativity and using coupon code PODCAST for 25% off your first order. And don't forget that if you found this episode interesting, to like and share it, and to leave us a review in your favorite podcast player. See you again in the next episode.